Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for Politically Incorrect Knitters. I'm Deplorable Knitter, and I'm joined as always by the lovely Ann Pinkova.
Hello.
And but I have not been knitting barely at all lately. I don't know what has happened to me. I've perused published patterns, I have tried to design my own, and every single thing that I pick up, I knit like 4 stitches and I put it back down. So I don't have anything to show. I did get a present in the mail that I do want to show you, but I didn't knit anything this week. But Anne is like on fire about her new sweater that she's working on.
All of your knit energy I've stolen, and part of that is I've started working on the sweater. I have my hand spun yarn. But secondly, I've been in total political nerd mode, like watching the RNC all the way through, and it is so good. Was so incredibly good. Like, the speakers that I thought performed the best were the people like Mike Pence and Trump and everybody. Their speeches were very good, but the people I enjoyed the most were the people that nobody knew. Right. From lobster fishermen who are talking about how Obama took away their fishing waters by regulations and Trump loosened it up and saved the industry that had been around for, since there has been Maine, there's been lobster fishermen, of the Ironwood ranges in Minnesota, and down the line to prisoners out of foreign countries who were released, that Trump got them released from places like Turkey and Iran, and it's been absolutely excellent, the speakers that they had. It was very much a love letter to America, to average everyday Americans. They had civil rights leaders, they had people talk about Susan B. Anthony, they pushed school choice and prison reform massively. And not just prison reform, they talked about programs for prisoners to help them, but several different people, Alice Johnson and I forget the name of the guy for Hope for Prisoners, but he had a very, very clear Christian message along with all the prison reform. And school choice was not just for kids in rough neighborhoods, but also for kids with disabilities, the right to try for medical things. And there's one video about state subsidized housing in inner cities and how offended people were that it went to illegal aliens instead of local people who have been waiting for those housing, trying to get out of homelessness for years. And Trump came in and helped that. Like, so much good stuff, and so much good stuff that people didn't even think about, that people didn't even know about. And Trump's like, oh, by the way, while everyone's talking over here, we're getting stuff done all the way down the line. And it was so good. Like, I cheered along like it was the Olympics.
It sounds like you really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, a lot of it happened past my bedtime. So I've seen some clips and some highlights on the morning news and things, but I just staying up past like 10 is just not really my thing. So I did miss a lot of it.
Right. And the one, people were saying that Trump's last speech went so late into the night, and I wasn't even watching it in real time. I was watching it a little later because I was delayed and started from the beginning. It was really good, though. And the fireworks were absolutely incredible. It said Trump 2020 over the Washington monuments. I mean, come on.
How much better can it get, right?
Like, I mean, yeah.
It's perfect.
I know. They hired an opera singer. It was great. They didn't have like the weird lighting, everybody wave with your masks on that Biden and Harris had. It was kind of creepy. But
yeah, there was a lot of, you mentioned it to me when we were talking on the phone about how, the production value of the RNC compared to the DNC was like no comparison. But the DNC's got all the Hollywood people. Like, where were they? Why did it look like it was put on by us in our bedrooms?
Right. Yeah. And then, the DNC had Hollywood actresses, but the whole time it was a Zoom call. It was people from their houses, when not a single time in all of the RNC, did you feel like you were on a Zoom call, or worse, watching someone else's boring Zoom call? Because there was several times where it was like people talking between videos in the DNC, and you're like, yeah, it's like they were forced to do a smiley meeting thing, and like, you people don't like each other. It was all the former Democratic candidates going, haha, you're so funny, back and forth, and pretending to be live, and it wasn't, because it was like mid-afternoon, wherever Bernie was. And it was, and one guy, I think it was Beto, I don't remember though, he was like in a public library for some reason, and going, it was weird and uncomfortable, especially for the audience, but also you felt for the candidates. And then the RNC, they focused on one person at a time, and it was, they were talking to you. There was no forced interactions. There was a couple times where there was little interview segments that either Pence was talking to somebody, or several times that Trump was talking to somebody. He was, let's see, there was a group of people, it was nurses and police officers, and I think some teachers in there, but definitely post office employees, that he was talking to people about what's going on. Like I said, the people who are released prisoners from foreign countries, he did a panel. He did a thing where it was a naturalization ceremony, and he talked about each person and sort of introduced them of when they came into the country and why and how. And yeah, so little segments like that, which were really interesting, and again, really diverse, a lot of different things going on. And it was very much a person-to-person interaction, or the person on the screen is looking at you and talking through the thing. And a lot of the speeches, they were like 5-6 minutes a piece. So very short, very to the point, very shareable. Like on social media, I thought that was really excellent. So you can like on Trump's Twitter, he reposted everybody's video individually. So if you're like, oh, well, all of this is a bit long, but I really liked this guy's speech, you could share it. So to make it more visible, so to take a larger event and to cut it into little segments I thought was really clever. Though it was just down the line what he said. He talked a lot about women's suffrage too, which is very interesting. Talking about Susan B. Anthony. He officially pardoned Susan B. Anthony for voting illegally. And also part of the video, they talked about the history of women's suffrage. It started as a Republican abolition movement. And part of that was saying, well, you know, here's all of us women and we want to vote against slavery, and we can't because we don't have the vote, was a big pushing factor to actually get the vote. And when Susan B. Anthony voted illegally, it was a full Republican ticket. And
that's very cool.
Yeah.
It's not something you hear much of either. It's not something you hear much anymore either.
Right. And part of it was women's suffrage only went through when there was a Republican in office, that they had to wait for the Democrat to be voted out of office, and then you can have women's suffrage. So yeah, nobody's saying that. And I didn't watch all the way through the DNC, but the clips that I saw were very, you know, back in the 60s, there's sad music, you know, horrible things. There was civil rights movement. Yes, but the Republican convention was, yeah, I too, what's the guy's name? Clarence Henderson, I believe, was saying that, you know, I was a part of the civil rights movement and I'm a Republican. And we have done so much and things can get so much better. That was such a big part of the convention that it was, you know, like, yes, we've had struggles and we still have struggles we need to overcome, but they have gotten better and they will be better and we will work to get them better. And this is what we have done to improve things now. And it's showing, and the results are already appearing to us now, which it was just so beautiful and optimistic. There's a lot of positivity, which you don't see that from any mainstream source at all. That for them to be so positive was excellent. It's like I was telling you that it reminded me of the one Disney World ride, which sounds lame, but you know, the Disney World ride, the Carousel of Progress, that it was made for the World Fair, and you go around a circle around the animatronic stage. And part of it is it's turn of the century and wow, things are better than they've ever been before. I can't believe it. It takes 7 days to go across the country on train. We are so advanced. It's so awesome. And then you go to the next one. It's the 1920s and there's electricity in the house. And whoa, everything's so great. It couldn't possibly get better than this. And then it keeps going. And I felt like that sort of very special American optimism was there, that the advancing of the culture. So yeah. Oh, and I didn't even show my sweater. So
No, you got on the RNC.
I know.
And you're so excited about it that you like,
I know.
what knitting? I don't knit.
Who
Whatever.
knits? Who knits? I just sit there with my little flag and I wave it. No, I didn't actually have a little flag. I did mime flag wagging a couple times, but don't tell anyone. It's between you and me. So anyways, my sweater. So it has pockets, as you can see. And oops, let's see, let's take a good look at that cable. But yeah, it's the way that I spun it, you can see it's a very large stripy kind of a sweater. And yeah, the cable's on the side. And it's kind of a problem because the original pattern, which it's just a guideline at this point pretty much, that it's, here we go. So it is, I can't even pronounce it. I think it's Cabal cardigan. It's from last year's fall interweave knits. But it's like that, as you can see from the magazine. Yeah. But the problem is that it was knit in panels. And if it's knit in panels, then I have this weird stripy yarn. That means the stripes wouldn't match up on the front of your sweater. So I'm just sort of taking their numbers as this vague measurement, and I'm not really sure.
Just kind of winging it.
Yeah. So I might.
And yeah. Tell our friends where you got the cable pattern from.
Oh, of course. Yeah. So again, I'm sitting here and I'm looking for a cardigan pattern, and I'm going back and forth, and I'm like, okay, this, but I don't like this, and I don't like that, and I like this pattern, but you know, I got to change this and that. And also it's a little plain, you know, I should add a little cable pattern. So the cable pattern is from the edge of the Mirror of Erised in the first Harry Potter movie, because I watched the first Harry Potter movie recently. I'm like, oh, well, look at that. I should incorporate that into a pattern. And then I'm like, oh, wait, I have a pattern that needs a little bit of something. So might as well throw that in there right now. So then I spent an afternoon working out how to get the cable just like the picture. So
of course you did, because that's what you do.
Yeah.
Heaven forbid it's not exactly perfect to what you are trying to copy or whatever.
Well, why do it if it's not going to be good? I mean,
I'm just saying that's your perfectionist coming out there. The whole, you know, gotta spend the whole day making sure it's going to be just so. I would knit it and I'd be like, oh, this is wrong, and I'd just rip it out.
Well, I did probably do the little cable pattern 3 times differently to make sure that I got the angles right, because and also I don't write cable patterns, so like I know how cables work. I have done cables before, and this seemed like a fairly simple get together. It's not like I'm making a tree or a bird or something, you know, that would take a lot more thought. That it was just I think there's only 5 little X's total, and you have to kind of bend it along the way. So it's not something super complicated if you're used to doing big complicated cables. It's just I had to sit down and figure it out.
Yeah, I released a cabled hat pattern a couple months ago, and the hardest part was writing the chart for it, because like I had a chart with cables on it, and then I had to write the decreases, and I sent it out to the testers, and I'm like, yeah, I don't even know if this is how it's supposed to be done. So you let me know, because I don't knit from charts and I don't knit cables, so have at it.
Right. Yeah, and if y'all are looking for this cable pattern, don't, because I'm not putting it out there. Unless I do later and I lied, but don't look for it. You know how bad I am getting. Yeah, you know how bad I am getting out patterns anyways? Hong Kong pattern, still not out. Needs to get out because people of Hong Kong are having a rough time.
So I have a couple things.
Yeah.
One, see my new mug?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the family and I took a little trip. It was so fabulous. And I don't know if this cold is from the trip or if it's allergies or what is going on, but something has been happening for several days now. So,
Yeah.
but so we had so much fun. It was great. My kids had never been to Niagara Falls before. So super great. We went in the gift shop because we weren't going to spend a lot of money, but we wanted to get a little something. This was our vacation this year.
Mhm.
One night, you know. So every single thing in the gift shop was made in China. In the New York gift shop. Come on.
Right. Like, come on, people.
Cuomo, what are you doing? Well, we know what he's doing. He's trying to make himself rich and famous. Write a book about how fabulous he is. But
yeah, he fired one of his top medical people, I heard.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Once I got this head cold, I've been out of the news. I don't know. I haven't been getting up early to watch it or anything.
Right.
It's been.
Well, I didn't follow that story particularly closely, so
Yeah.
you know.
But so, yeah, Niagara Falls was super fun, and there wasn't a lot of people there because obviously COVID and social distancing, and so like it wasn't terrible. Well, it was pretty good. And I also got my new shirts.
Yay!
And I know people were wanting them. And I don't know if they're going to go in the shop. Honestly, right now, my stepdad helps me with a lot of like the business stuff, and he got a job working for the government as a census person.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know right now with me starting up homeschooling if it's something I'm going to take on, just because we've done 3 whole days of homeschooling. Today was our 3rd day, and I was telling Anne that it was like the book Alexander's Awful, Terrible, No Good Day, or whatever the title is. It just, one was crying, the cat was breaking stuff. It was, we were doing it. It was going along pretty well. I'm reading them the story of Joseph and his Technicolor coat, and, you know, they want to know what happens to Joseph, and then the cat breaks a pot, and then everything just went to crap really fast. It was really, really awesome. It's great. So, yeah, we're getting into it. It's been good so far. Today was a little rough, but I don't know. I think being trapped in the same room as my kids every day of the week, we're going to have some rough days. It's going to happen.
You know.
So, but that's okay. And then my last thing that has, it's my father-in-law. He lives in Florida. He loves to go to estate sales, right? So he sent me these bags of needles. It's chock full of like vintage needles.
Wow.
And then this one has got cable needles and stitch holders and the little bobbin things for color work.
Yeah.
And every size of double point. I'm terrible when I bind off my hats. I use whatever size is kind of close to the size I'm using to do the crown. Like, I don't, if I'm writing a pattern and it's like size 5s and I don't know where my 5s are, I just grab like a 3 or a 7 and I move on. They might not even all be the same size when I do it. So I'm kind of excited. There's a whole bunch of double points in here. There's some old school, there's this old school stitch counter where it's got like these little pegs and you put them in the holes and you can count. Like every time you do a row, you move it and there's all numbers on them. It's hard to see because it's in the bag, but yeah, just like it's a really cool bag. And he got it for $1. He got both bags for $1. Wow. And so even in Florida, he only paid like $14 or something for everything. So they came in the mail today, like Christmas, and I was pretty stoked. And I got to open them after the hoopla with everything happened, so I was like, oh, this is nice. It was a little perk after that nonsense. So
see, this week I did get a little tiny bit of squishy mail, but it was only, it's not like fun or from our friends or something. It is, here, give me a second. A couple weeks ago, I got this, I don't know, it's some brand of German sock yarn, and it's wild. I absolutely love it. So I thought I'd make a pair of socks, and ain't nobody got time for these socks, but on Etsy. So I got this also German sock yarn, except it came from Latvia, to do heels and toes, because it is such a wild color that only something equally as wild can match it.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, so I got this nice little postcard from Latvia. So
Cool.
Nice. But I also have this thing of yarn, so I can do heels and toes in 2 different colors with the same crazy burnt orange. So I'm excited.
Yeah, you were telling me about the burnt orange on the phone, and I'm trying to envision it, but now that I see them together, yeah.
Right, that it's two different pairs of socks, but that it's enough of a crossover between each, so I don't feel too bad for, running out and buying yarn immediately once I have it.
Yes. I always feel bad when I buy yarn because my yarn will. Seriously, so this week I'm trying to knit. I've got all these ideas in my head. I got yarn out. I wound it up in the cakes. I got it ready. And then I put it down. Like, I never even cast on. And I did that like 3 separate times. I'm like, gosh, I just need to step away for a minute. This is nothing is working for me today. Like this week, it's been crazy stuff.
Right, and especially since I'm so excited for this sweater I'm working on, and I still have to finish spinning some of the yarn for it, because as you saw, there's these weird large stripes in it, and once I get to the point where I have to divide for the top, that's going to be weird to try to get my stripes to match, and different things like that, so I have to spin yarn so they're somewhat similar, so I can have different panels and sleeves and all sorts of stuff like that, which is just going to be a pain. I even thought of doing raglan set-in sleeves, but I've only done raglan top down, not bottom up, so I don't know how that works. If you have a pattern out there, if anyone has a pattern or wants to explain how this works to me, please do, because I have no idea. But
awesome.
All of that, and I'm like, ooh, socks.
I've only successfully made one pattern, one sweater that wasn't for a baby. I mean, I think everybody's knocked out one of those little baby sweaters, but
right.
Or a lot of people have, but I've only successfully made one sweater. It was a cardigan for my mom, and it was top down raglan sleeves. I could not tell you how to do anything else. I have no idea. 2 years ago, I started the yoke of a sweater for my husband. It's this long. and last year I started him a blanket, and it's this long. I'm not great at following through on large projects, unfortunately. I really want to be, but I'm just not.
Yeah. And then, so this past week, we went to go see what is it called? David Copperfield, but it's called the personal adventures of personal account, doesn't say autobiography, but something like that. Anyways, David Copperfield. And part of the story is this little seaside town, and everybody has these really excellent fisherman sweaters. And I'm like, ooh, shiny. I could do that too. No, Anne. No, you couldn't. In fact, you absolutely need to stop. And we still have that Americana quilt to finish. And at some point, I got to knit up a big Betsy Ross flag. And not that that's a terrible thing. It's mostly going to be large stripes. So that's fine. I just have to sit down and do the chart for the stars so I know in proportion how large the blanket needs to be. I just need to get that done. And then
we were talking about, there's so many things that have been going on that we wanted to touch on. We're trying to figure out what is the most important thing first, right?
Right.
And I guess there's this woman on Instagram called Design Mom, and apparently she's on Twitter too, but I don't Twitter. Do you go on there?
I do not Twitter.
No. So she wrote this long Twitter thing. It's 28 separate tweets or something. And she pretty much, the whole gist of them, I can give you the gist in one tweet.
Yeah, it's like, come on, wasn't Twitter supposed to be about brevity? Come on, woman.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So pretty much, if you like Trump, you suck. She hates you as a person, don't follow her.
Wow.
So there's that. And then the reason, so she's an influencer, a designer, a blogger, an author.
Wow.
So 126,000 followers.
Wow, quite fancy.
Yeah, super fancy, awesome people.
Still, a woman of influence, and then she's saying that half of the population is irredeemable. It's not to take your story and grab it and run, but rather like the one guy who was killed in Portland, that he was shot for being a Trump supporter, and then around the corner, Black Lives Matter celebrated, saying that we killed a fascist tonight. You know, people are, with the Ravelry thing that happened, Ravelry said that if you're a Trump supporter, you're a white supremacist and you're done, you're irredeemable. And that was so bizarre and so shocking because, hello, we're not white supremacists. And all of these, there's several groups now that, you know, Black supporters of Trump, and many of them were at the RNC talking about, you know, their lives and experiences and why they support Trump. That, according to Black Lives Matter, is impossible. That your skin color equals your ideology, which is racist, and that you're evil if you're a Republican. It's just horrible, horrible things. You disagree with me, therefore you're fascist. Or you must be fascist because you support this guy. Why is he a fascist? There's no evidence, there's no proof. And then when somebody who is a Trump supporter dies, people celebrate. And I know that this is a knitting influencer, and she doesn't seem to be calling for the death of people, but she is saying that they're the scum of the earth. You know, that there's, don't follow me, don't, like, you, I've said this before, but having people who say, don't follow me, as if you can choose the people who like you. And if people who like you are people that you don't like, that is intolerable. That's so bizarre to me. Like,
yeah. Well, actually what she says, and she's not a knitter, she's some sort of designer. I don't know a lot about her. But what she said was that she hates it when people say, oh, I come here to see design, not your, you know, politics. And she goes, Trump supporters are ashamed to admit that they support him. And I do not create content for you. It makes me sick to my stomach that you, a Trump supporter, would ever read, watch, or listen to anything I've created.
Oh, you Trump supporter, that you have ears and eyes.
And that you freely look at stuff that somebody is putting out there.
Right. You should just sit in your corner. And
so she's a New York Times bestselling author, right? So
really,
she is making money off of capitalism and her ability to market herself and whatever.
right.
But we're not, so she's free to make her money off of it, but if we don't agree with her politically, we can't look at her stuff. Like, that's not how it works. If you're putting your stuff out there, you have no right to say who can or cannot enjoy it, look at it, whatever. I don't get it. And the reason it came to my attention is because there's a knitting designer named Hunter Hammersman who says, go read the slides. They're absolutely spot on. If you're a Trump supporter, nothing I make is for you. Nothing I sell is for you. Nothing I share online is for you. I do not like you. I think you are a terrible person. I want nothing to do with you. So that's fine. That's her point of view. But
that's
like
straight up bigotry. And do you think you're the good guy when you do that? Do you think?
I think they must. I think that they think that it goes back to that. They believe that we are bad people with bad ideas, whereas we believe they are good people with bad ideas. And so therefore, because we are bad people, they can say things like, I don't like you. Not that I've ever said that to somebody who's not politically aligned with me. That just doesn't make any sense.
Right. Or at least the fact that you are not politically aligned with me isn't necessarily the reason that I don't like you. Like there's
I don't like you because you're obviously a jerk is what happens with that
right.
one. You're not the kind of person I want in my life.
If you're a jerk, then that's enough reason for me not to like you. But also, I mean, even if you're all sunshine and daisies and you're promoting an ideology which is physically harmful to people, I would say that's pretty unlikable. It's like BLM. They're like, oh, well, we're just advocating for equality and all of this. And that's just what Black Lives Matter is about. They just want to end police brutality. They're being plenty brutal themselves. No, that's not us. Yeah, it is though. Yeah, it is.
It's all very convoluted. But my question about these people, out of the first woman's 125,000 followers, and out of the Hunter Hammersman's 50,000 followers or whatever she has, are the Trump supporters leaving them? Are they still going to follow them after they call them names?
Right.
Like, I think it kind of goes back to the whole, we need to speak up. If you follow these people and you allow them to say this stuff to you and you tolerate it because you like their content or whatever, you're part of the problem.
Yeah.
Because my kids have said to me, oh, I'm a Republican like you. Super great, awesome. So they're on the playground, they're playing. Some kids like, I don't like you because you're Republican. I wouldn't be like, hey, go keep playing with them. It's okay. I'd be like, no.
And there's a certain amount of, well, if you can still get along and be politically different, well, of course. But if that kid is actively bullying other kids because of their political beliefs, then buddy.
But my point is, you wouldn't tolerate it for your children. So why do we tolerate it for ourselves as adults?
Right. That there is political bullying. And I know one always puts the caveat out there of, oh, well, there's political bullying. It can come from either side. Yeah, one side is physically harming people in the streets. People have actually died. The one guy who got shot in Portland, and which I think has freaked out a lot of people. But it's a scary thing, and then celebrated. It's sick.
It's messed up, and then, but I just want to, seriously, and if you follow us and you also follow people who say things like that, I want to know what the justification is. Like, how, not that you guys can't follow anybody you want to. That's not my point. My point is why is that something that we're okay to tolerate? If you were in a relationship and somebody was speaking to you that way, people would encourage you to leave. So what is it about, like, social media and the stuff that people are so scared to stand up for themselves? I guess is kind of my question.
That's very true. Though, I mean, I will say for my own thing that I follow several liberal people just to be like, oh, well, this is the new thing today. Right. So, like, I still follow Ravelry on Instagram. I'm not a fan. Spoiler. But they come out with, oh, this is what we're doing today. And I'm like, oh, okay. So now I know that this is a trend because I can see it firsthand, that it's not like through the grapevine.
Right. And I guess that I'm being a little unfair too, because I also follow people that don't like me. And I know that, but I guess
right.
The reason I do it is because I am like watching for what's going on in the community so we can talk about it and talk to our viewers about it. And
a little bit separate from that, but if you yourself are a big time knitting influencer and you want to come out as conservative, you could come on, we could chat and we'll have a great time.
Yeah, that is actually something that I have been wanting to say too, and I never think of it when we're on. But if you if you have a brick and mortar store, if you, even if you're not into knitting, but you're out there in some other way that's interesting and people would enjoy,
right?
Let us know.
Shoot us a thing on Instagram. We'll see it.
Yep. Or email us or whatever.
Uh-huh.
We're not that hard to find, honestly. We make it really easy, actually, to find us. I list everything in the description.
Right.
You can get us.
Yep.
If you support Trump, nothing I design is for you, nothing I create is for you, go away.
Right. And to pause that again, even if, okay, so we're Trump supporters. Hi, but our audience, you don't have to be a Trump supporter.
Well,
we're not.
And I think that there's a misconception from people who don't like Trump, the people who follow him think that everything he does is great.
Uh-huh.
I do think that a lot of his stuff is great. Sometimes I wish he would stop tweeting for reals. Like,
oh
because,
man, I love the tweets. I'm sorry.
I do too, but there's some things that
makes
he
me laugh.
says where it's just like, you know, everybody's gonna get mad about that. Like, come on. You know what I mean?
But that, I don't know. I think they're pretty clever that if everybody gets mad about something he says, that drags the whole news narrative in one direction or another, which I think is pretty smart.
Okay, I'll give it to you.
But I don't know. He's just like strong language, but true though. I'm like, Mr. President, what are you retweeting? But yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. So, on that vein, for people who are not on Ravelry, a new pattern came out end of last week, I think, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, and it caused quite the stir because it's actually a very nice looking hat. It's got really clever crown decreases, which I enjoyed looking at.
Oh yes.
But
it's a very sleek pattern.
It is, except that it has these letters on it that say ACAB, and for those of you not in the know, that means all cops are bastards. And
yes, and it's
back to like number 2 on Ravelry's Hot right now. Or something. I might be wrong about the number, but it was up there.
Quite popular. And it's also a very common acronym to be spray painted on buildings that have been destroyed or shall be destroyed. And a lot of vandalism, a lot of torn down statues have that spray painted on it. So,
interesting.
Yeah. So it's not just it's not just when you're creating something yourself. It's a fun little vandalism tag to put on things.
Well, that's good to know in case I ever need it.
Yeah.
In case there's anything I ever need to vandalize. It's
kind of like there's this one story in England about how it was a beach party that sort of turned into a riot. And whenever,
sort of turned into a riot, because that obviously happens a lot.
You know, sometimes it happens. Nigel Farage has a video. It's on his page. You can see it. But one of the things is that whenever somebody was grabbed by a police officer, they'd say Black Lives Matter as if that was the get out of jail free card. And, you know, if you need another get out of jail free card, you know, ACAB, I'm sure cops love it when you scream that at their face.
I'm sure. But the thing about the pattern on Ravelry that also struck me was that people were coming out and using Ravelry's words saying, I'm a police officer's spouse or family member. This makes me feel unsafe in your area. And what do you think that they said about it?
They didn't care.
Nope, there were crickets. There was no response. I don't know. Somebody may have gotten a response from them. I am not active on their site, so I don't know if it was true or if anybody has or not. But, you know, and then the designers, like, just slamming these people who say these things like, oh, you know, your family is part of the problem and they choose this and they deserve it. And it's just really, it goes back to that thing where, like, when people are calling you these horrible names, how can you support it? I just, like, but it's only a safe space for the people that are in the correct groups. Apparently, cops are not the correct group anymore, so sorry, you have to move on.
Right. And also to bring up Kenosha again, and they're talking about Jacob Blake and everything that happened there, that in Kenosha, okay, the Jacob Blake incident, you can see the video. You can see the whole thing. It's the cop, it's been, some people said Jacob Blake, it was a traffic stop and he got shot 7 times in the back. And other people say, oh, he was doing the police's job because he was, you know, breaking up a fight between 2 women. Yeah, none of that. The police were called because he had an arrest warrant out for rape. And also the woman called up and said, hey, the guy who raped me, he's back and he stole my car keys and my kids are in, believe it was her kids, 3 kids in the car. He stole them, and yeah, please come. And the cops came. He was going around to his car for a weapon, and they're yelling at him to stop. And there was an altercation before. The cops tased him, and he did not stop. And they're dragging his shirt away, telling him to stop, and he's still going. That is the point. And they didn't know what was in the car either. And that was the point at which they shot him in the back because he was reaching forward and they were grabbing and pulling back. Oh, well, he was just what a lovely, peaceful fellow. Yeah, me too, says the woman who calls the cop. But that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter at all. That this guy was a sexual offender and you're all defending him as if he's a saint. He's not a saint.
And there's been the refrain a lot of like, oh, anybody who says we need to see the video, we don't know the whole story, you're terrible people. But you hear the report that he's going for a weapon and they tased him and nothing is working. Right. Well, I think that changes how it happened a little bit. It's not like he was retreating with his hands up and they just out of the blue shot him. He was crazy. Right. He was obviously
he was grabbing for a weapon. And there's been people like, oh, well, people's past don't define them. Just because he had a history of violent crime and keeping weapons in the vehicle doesn't mean that the cops should have been wary about him keeping weapons in the vehicle. Spoiler, he has a weapon in the vehicle. Like, he's not a nice guy. Stop. Oh, well, this poor innocent man who was shot by cops. It's not as if I want him to be shot by cops, but then again, I also don't want him to be reaching for a weapon to attack the cops. He's not just like, oh, by the way, I'm just reaching for this card just so I can hold on to it. It makes me feel better. He's going to use it, people. There's no something going to happen.
With that.
So Tina's knit along.
Yeah, so the ACAB pattern, I don't want to keep saying the awful name, spawned a knit along by Tina, who was on with us a while ago with Awenydd yarn and fiber. She organized it because she was ticked off, which I don't blame her.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, and the point of the knit along, I believe it used to be a free pattern. I don't know if it still is, but it was, if you have the free pattern, you can post pictures of your projects. And I believe her goal was to then go through and post pictures of pro-police things. So she has a yarn called Thin Blue Line, which we've featured before. You have several Back the Police patterns that would be perfect for that.
So, if you're interested in Tina's knit along, sorry, my yarn isn't grabbing it, but I have a skein of her Thin Blue Line yarn, and it's very lovely. And so her thought was to knit up the hat pattern. So, like I said, it's not a bad pattern. Like it's a nice looking hat without the words. And then she was saying that you can knit it up in this yarn. Or you could also go with one of our patterns if that's something you want to do. Back the Blue. No, sorry. This one's Blue Lives Matter. This one is Back the Blue. But I think the idea is to kind of flood the hashtag, raise money for cops, raise money for that kind of thing, and take care of to kind of counteract this horrible evilness that they're putting out there. Right. Horrible hate, I guess.
Definitely.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
it's important.
And I'll drop Tina's info. I want to talk about Nancy Pelosi.
Oh.
Do you know what she did?
I heard about the hairdressing thing. Is that what you're going to talk about? Oh, yeah. Well, please continue. Don't let me spoil your story.
It's okay. You spoil all my stories.
Oh. I'm sorry.
No, I'm kidding.
I'll be quiet. Please.
No. So our fearless leader, Nancy Pelosi, who is so into masks and everybody do their part and stay home and flatten the curve while we eat $12 ice cream, has once again shown that she's better than the rest of us by going into a closed salon and getting her hair done, the whole time not wearing a mask herself.
Oh, of course not. Why would she? She is clean. It's you peasants who are filthy with your filthy diseases. So if you could like not touch me, that'd be great.
But it just, the blatant hypocrisy that is out there is just so disturbing, and I don't understand why other people don't see it. I think that's part of the problem with it. Oh, and then the salon owner apparently said that it's a slap in the face that she went in, that she thinks that she's above it and can go in and get her stuff done, and that the salon owner can't even work.
Right.
So
it's
that's
like,
pretty
by the way,
too.
I want you to be unemployed except exactly for the time frame that I call you.
Except for when I need you to do stuff for me.
Right. Right. And then I'll call, and am I going to, I don't know, she's a fairly wealthy lady. Maybe she could, give more money to the salon to keep it open so it's there at the end of the shutdown. I'm guessing that wasn't the case.
Probably not. No. And this is somewhat unrelated, but you said shutdown, which Ron DeSantis, he's the Florida governor.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yep.
I heard on the news today that he is saying that his state will not shut down again.
Right.
He's saying that in the nursing homes, there's too many people who are at end of life and they need to be able to be with their family, and he's not going to shut down again. And I think that's awesome. I actually, yesterday we had a window visit with my grandmother, who she knows who I am, but I had a mask on and she did not recognize me. She didn't, and it's been so long since we've seen her. It was really discouraging, and you can tell, like, my dad's been doing window visits with her all along. I just haven't been able to make it when they've been doing them. Well, actually not all along. She's been quarantined several times throughout this too, because of her caregivers being exposed. But my dad's going, oh, she looked great today. But me, someone who hasn't seen her in 5 months, she was thin. She seems very confused. She, for several years, she hasn't been able to remember my kids' names. I mean, she's 95. So that's just part of, you hit an age, you forget stuff. There's no more room in there.
Right.
But, I mean, we spent every single weekend at her house when we were kids, and she did not recognize me until my dad's like, oh, you know who this is. You remember? And she goes, oh, yeah. But then a few minutes later, she couldn't say my name. So it's so important. And the way these people are just so flip about, you guys can't go do this, you guys can't do that, but Nancy Pelosi can go get her hair done, but now my grandma doesn't know who I am. Like, it's
such a horrible thing that it's not save lives from COVID and people won't die over here. You said before, stress and loneliness are the two worst killers, not just of older people, of all people. That the suicide rate is up horribly, that you have overdose rates, and people losing their jobs is a huge thing for suicides. And also, funnily enough, the CDC numbers came out, and by the way, our original numbers of all of the COVID deaths, 6% of all of the COVID recorded deaths were from COVID alone. Okay, that is under 10,000 people.
Yeah, it was like 9,200. Right. And most of them probably could be attributed to the great state of New York and King Cuomo there.
Right.
Him and his nonsense, terrible policies that made everything horrible.
Yep. Putting young people with COVID into nursing homes was a massive killer.
It's horrible.
And the other people who died of COVID, there was an average of, so if COVID was the tipping point, it was something like 2.6 comorbidities. Like, it's not just like, oh, you have a heart problem and also you have COVID. That may have been the case for some people, but the majority, it was 2.6. So that is heart problems, lung problems, overweight, diabetic.
There's a whole bunch of contributing factors. It's not just
Right. And while you may say, yes, it was COVID, they're still dead because COVID came around. Perhaps it would have been later. I don't want to be like unsympathetic because obviously you don't want anyone to die. But to have shut down the entire nation for something which we're in America, not even worldwide, but in America, we are not yet to the number of swine flu infections, that there were more swine flu infections when that was going on, and more swine flu deaths than we currently have. Like, that's even
Right.
with the inflated CDC number, that we are not at swine flu levels, and we didn't shut down for that. And like I said, COVID, it's not death versus not death, it's death versus death. Because you are destroying people's lives with the lockdown, and you're getting other sicknesses, and people who are not getting cancer checks, people who are like, oh, well, I don't feel so great, but I'm not going to go to the hospital because I don't want to get COVID. You have all of these problems, as well as stress, as well as loneliness, as well as destroying the personal trust in between people, which really is the greatest resource we have, is trust in our own societies. And while we have political unrest, you're also afraid of getting too close to a person because you might get disease. This is just breaking the bonds between people and not bringing them together intentionally, it seems.
It does seem intentional. And, you know, that was one thing we noticed in Niagara Falls, is that, like my family, if we weren't in a crowd, we were walking around without our masks on. Mm-hmm. I mean, there were some areas where it was busy or we were standing in line, and, you know, we followed the regulations and we put them on because, you know, we weren't able to social distance and whatever. But what I noticed a lot was that, like, people weren't making eye contact with you, especially if you weren't wearing a mask.
Right, that.
Like, it was
COVID
like you
is
weren't
through eye
even
contact.
There. And it's really disturbing because, like, my kids are very friendly. They always have been. Like, they don't care how old another kid is. They are thrilled if there's another kid they could play with. They are so friendly. And so, you know, we're walking down and they're like waving at other little kids and stuff. And like the little kids aren't even like, what is that going to harm anything? Why can't we still be nice to each other?
Right. And humans need humans. Okay. Kids need contact with other kids. Kids need contact with adults. Adults need contact with adults. We are social creatures, okay? We need that interaction in order to be healthy and well-adjusted in society. Like, and then I believe, you know, then they have numbers about like lone wolf terrorist shooters, that sort of a weird class of people. It is socially isolated young men.
Yeah. What are we doing here? We're socially isolating everybody.
Right. It's like healthy, well-adjusted people do not come from social isolation. Okay. You need people to some extent. Okay. And even if you're saying, oh, you have to stay in your own family bubble and you can't see anyone and you can only see people through the filter of the internet, and people are different when they talk through the internet than when they talk in person. They just are.
Right.
This is just so, you couldn't attack the social fabric of a nation like to such an extent. You just couldn't. And then to say, and then the further fear fellow people, and then hatred of, well, you don't care about people who die. Well, I do care about people who die. I don't want people to die. But again, it's death and death. It's not no death or COVID death. It is larger death from the shutdown, pain and suffering from the shutdown, or minimal COVID death. Okay, we're doing our best to not let the COVID infection run wild, and then people are shutting down the CDC numbers. Listen to the scientists until the scientists say something and we're like, oh, well, you can't possibly know those numbers. You're taking them out of context. You're not a scientist. Oh, you see you see these doctors over there. They're also saying things about the CDC numbers, but they're the wrong scientists. So,
but you know, you're talking about how the shutdown is affecting more people than just the people who get sick. And that's one thing that my dad has mentioned several times, is that, you know, especially because my family was very strict about social distancing in the beginning. I lived in a state where it was very, very prevalent. So we were careful. We were very careful.
Right.
And so like,
right. And again, it's at the beginning of the disease. Everyone says it's terrible. So you're like, yeah, it's terrible, then I don't want it. And then it slowly keeps going like, oh, well, I guess it's not. So, it's bad. People die, but it's not what we said. Less than 2% of the population got it at all. And those are even people who got it lightly. Anyways, sorry. Please continue.
Yeah, but so, I mean, for several months, we were like Zooming with my parents and things because we weren't seeing them in person. And my dad, whose mother it was that we visited in the nursing home, he was saying, I'm so sad. I'm in this strange position where my mother is at the end of her life, and 5 months when you're 95 is a long time. How many more months is she going to have? And then he goes, and then on the other end of the spectrum, I have your kids who are small, and 5 months is a lifetime to them. Mm-hmm. They have changed and grown so much, and we haven't been able to be there to see it. And so like, it's this whole, it's taking away that family bond and the community and the being with people. And is it worth it? I'm not saying that people haven't gotten sick. I'm not. I
believe it was Laura Rosen Cohen who said, and I love her articles that she does, but she said, when did living become that the point of living was to avoid dying? That is not the point. We only have so much time anyways. And it's like, we're so afraid of living our lives. And then in addition of, we're so afraid of living our lives because we might get a mostly curable disease. And, sorry to sneeze, don't make eye contact through the computer. Too much. But yeah, the point of living is to live, not to, you want to avoid death, but you can't avoid death. We all die. Just in case you didn't know, we're all going to die, us especially. So, but we are, that you have to go out there and you have to be able to live your life. And also you're cutting out meaningful contact. And in addition to being afraid of living your life, you're also now afraid to say what you think. That your thoughts you can't be free with your thoughts. Your thoughts have to be in a certain way, or else you can't interact in society. So it's from both sides. Don't be too close to people. And also, when you are too close to people and you express a political opinion and it's a little bit wrong, we're going to shut you down. Like it's kind of a double.
That's a really good parallel I hadn't thought of, is that it's kind of the same thing. You can't be around people, you can't do your stuff, you can't say what you think, got to keep it all in our bubble.
Yep.
Because you don't want to upset anybody.
Yep, our bubble in which we mostly communicate through screens. Again, not to make everything about Trump, but there's been a huge swing to Trump after the RNC. From people calling into C-SPAN and even when you have CNN and NBC who cut out speeches, they especially cut out speeches from, I believe the first night there was a man who spoke who had come from Cuba. Incredibly touching story. And the fourth night there was a blind Chinese man who was a political escapee from China who was reading his speech in Braille, and CNN cut out his speech about how horrible the Chinese government is. And that having all of this positive Trump energy, Black Americans, this is the highest approval rating that any Republican has had in years. I think first number I heard, it was a 6-point jump to Trump, and Trump's numbers have been higher than Biden's. And I was telling you yesterday about how they're already saying, oh, well, it will look like Trump has won but it won't really be. It'll be a lie. It's just the most horrible gaslighting thing. They are pulling out every stop for this one. And I mean, I like to think that it's because Trump is winning. I think because conservatives are winning. And I think we need to pull out every stop back, not in the insidious way, but in the pro-American, let's get things done. And let's, retain and expand our freedoms.
I think you're right. And it's funny because after the DNC, Biden lost all those numbers. Trump actually went up, which is not supposed to happen after a party's convention.
Yeah, the convention is supposed to be rah, rah, rah for the base, and oops.
But it was so much doom and gloom, and, Biden wasn't going to come out of his basement, and all of a sudden, we've seen him all around. Haven't you heard? He was in Pennsylvania. He was in Delaware. He's doing some stuff all of a sudden.
All of a sudden, he's against the riots. Which
I know.
I thought they were
95 days.
Yeah, I thought he was for a peaceful protest.
But it took him 95 days to say he was against the riots because people liked it when the Republicans said they were against the riots. And now all of a sudden, we are too.
Now he is against the riots. And not only did he have that bizarre rambling thing in Pittsburgh where he couldn't run on a full sentence about the coronavirus, but it was also, he said that Trump has a militia, and the militia that Trump is starting as he stirs up the violence is what's burning things down. That is Trump. Yeah. And I was just like, where they at? Yeah, that it's Trump is,
I don't think that Trump has a militia. I think that what's happening is that people are seeing what is going to be allowed if Democrats are in power. And I just saw in the news this morning that the gun sales for minorities are up astronomical amounts because people are realizing that they can't count on the government.
Yeah,
they're defunding the police. They're allowing the riots. So yes, I'm going to need to defend myself. So maybe it looks like a militia, but I think that they've brought that on themselves. Yeah, no, the world is upside down all of a sudden, and I don't understand. And I don't understand how people can think that this is all good and okay, and the, CNN saying, it's mostly peaceful protest while there's a fire
when
burning
it's on fire.
Like, come on. Like,
I know.
I just, how
do they want that shot? Because
I know, if you're gonna say it's mostly peaceful protest, don't stand in front of the fire, the building that's on fire. Find a tree, find a group of people praying. Find something that looks peaceful if that's what you're gonna try to sell.
Find one person with a nice sign in front of all of the building windows are boarded up. I guess that's not such a great graphic. Better than fire though.
Yeah.
But we just made it to September. Time marches on if we want it to or not. So
Anne and I have more for you. There was more we wanted to talk about today, but we got a little verbose as we tend to. So tune in next time to find out what else we think about everything. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and thanks for joining us.
Yep, we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.